If your home feels cluttered and messy, you may not have a motivation problem. You may be overlooking the things that your eyes have learned to ignore. Today, we're looking at 5 decluttering blind spots, the hidden sources of visual noise, maintenance, and unfinished decisions that don't show up on a typical decluttering checklist, but are sneakily keeping your home feeling heavier than it should. Hey, I'm Robin, retired ER nurse, and I help women over 40 get their homes and their energy back under control. Let's get into it. Blind spot number 1 is useful someday. This is the blind spot that gets almost everyone because these items have a built-in excuse baked right into them. And sure, they're technically useful, so your brain refuses to even file them as clutter, even when they've done nothing for you for years. They are freeloaders, extra kitchen tools, specialty appliances, and hey, I will defend my pasta roller to my dying breath. But that's because I actually use it. You know what I didn't use? That would have been my Ninja Creamy. It sat on the shelf. I used it a handful of times, and sure, it was technically a very incredible, but really it was practically decorative. So duplicate tools are another one. You only need pickle. Duplicate tools are another one. You only need one Phillips screwdriver, one flathead, one hammer, unless you're an actual carpenter, in which case, carry on, this is not for you. Supplies for your mouse hat crocheting hobby that you stopped a long time ago, you can let those go. Clothing for an imagined future version of yourself you never met, you know the one. Mine apparently was going to be a roller skating diva at some point, but she never showed up. Here's the key idea. Useful in theory is not the same as useful in your actual life. An item can be objectively useful, but still not belong in your home because your home is not a museum of things that could theoretically help someone. It's a place for the things that actually help sweet little old you. Speaking of what actually deserves a place in your life, this is a good spot to mention something small that I have added to mine. Now you know how I care about my health. And this video is sponsored by Timeline by MitoPure. Now you might know this, I mention it all the time. Here's the thing about me. I want to be gardening in my 90s. Hands in the dirt, still doing it myself. Harvesting things, maybe a little bit of canning. So I focus on healthy living, eating well, strength training, because that's the version of me I'm actually working towards. One of the things that made me pay attention to MitoPure is that it is clinically proven to renew mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of the cell, if you remember that from any biology classes. And one study actually showed that muscle strength increased by up to 12% after 16 weeks of use without any change in exercise. That's the kind of thing that gets my attention because it's not about doing more. It's just support underneath everything else that I'm already doing. My husband and I both take the MitoPure gummies now, and honestly, they're just super yummy. You can get capsules as well. These are strawberry flavored, no weird aftertaste, and it's easy to remember because they don't feel like a chore. 2 gummies and done. If you're curious, check out this link. All right, back to the blind spot number 2. Blind spot 2, contained clutter. This one is sneaky because it hides behind good intentions. You put things in a basket, a bin, a drawer, or a cupboard, and because it's contained, it looks handled, even organized. But contained is not the same as managed. The overflowing catch-all basket, you know the one. It catches everything and it releases nothing. It's like the Hotel California of unused containers. Tupperware without lids, lids without Tupperware, the whole tragic situation living in a cabinet somewhere. Duplicate cleaning projects because apparently we all own 4 half-used bottles of the same all-purpose spray. Mystery cords and chargers for devices that left this earth years ago. I guarantee you own a charger right now for something you couldn't identify in a lineup. And temporary piles instead of cabinet, the ones that have been temporary for roughly 9.5 years. Here's the idea. Storage is so good at hiding clutter without actually reducing it. A closed cabinet door doesn't mean the problem is solved. It just means you don't have to look at it every day, which honestly might be worse because you forget it's there and it never actually gets addressed. Blind spot 3, visual noise. This is one of my favorites to talk about because it explains something people feel constantly but rarely have language for. A room can be clean and still feel uncomfortably untidy. Can you hear that frog? There's a frog. Okay, it's outside. It's not about excess in any one spot. It's about too many small things existing together, clusters of little objects on every surface, tchotchke communities that have their own mirror, as in trinkety decorations. The dusting takes 11 hours. Packaging left visible. This one I actually solved in my own pantry. My shelves are open, so everything is visible all of the time. And I made one section just jars. Beautiful, same shape, same look. Suddenly that whole section of the pantry, it feels calm instead of chaotic, even though the amount of food didn't change at all. And then one section is all the ugly boxes where it's less visible from where I stand. Anyway, nothing changed except the packaging. My brain, however, was giving me applause with how clean it felt. And that felt great. Open shelving filled edge to edge, appliance cords dangling everywhere they can be seen. If you can hide it, please hide it. And fridge door papers and magnets. Let's move on. This connects to something I hear a lot. A room can be objectively clean, not dusty, and still feel busy, cluttered, unfinished. That feeling is real, and it's coming from the visual noise and not from dirt. The next one is maintenance. So this blind spot, it isn't as much about how much stuff you own, but it's more about ongoing effort that stuff demands from you, disproportionate to what it actually gives you. So think about the decor that has to be constantly dusted. You could see the tchotchkes I mentioned before, but here's the honest test. If you don't actually like it or you don't really use it, the fact that it requires upkeep is a pretty clear sign it's clutter wearing a decorative disguise. If everything is sentimental, nothing is. So keep that in mind when you are going through all of the tchotchkes. How about clothing that needs special care? Hand wash only, dry clean only, lay flat to dry. If you're not wearing it, that special care requirement is just an extra tax you are paying for, and you might not even be wearing it. There's a very pinpointable guilt owning something that dry clean only that you've only worn about once. Here's the key idea. If an object is creating a recurring task in your life, dusting it, hand washing it, moving to clean around it, it belongs in the decluttering conversation if you aren't using it and enjoying it. Also, throw it in that decluttering bag, whether or not it's technically clutter in the traditional sense. Blind spot 5 is other people's stuff. Now, if you live with people who are sprawlers and leave their stuff laying around, maybe your husband is like mine and leaves his pants in the living room. I'm not really talking about that though. I'm talking about the maybe perhaps empty nest season. And I do, and they've left stuff. And I want to slow down here because this blind spot carries more emotional weight than the other 4 combined. Other people's belongings still living in your home, maybe gifts that you don't actually use, family history stored out of guilt, items kept because someone else might want them someday, things that belong in a stage of household past, kids that moved out, a life stage that's already over. The emotional tension here, it's not simply throw things away. Pickle, shh. It's something way more specific than that. You may not be struggling to let go of the thing. You may be struggling to let go of the responsibility attached to the thing, the feeling. The distinction matters because when it's not really your item, when it's holding someone else's memory, someone else's guilt, someone else's unfinished decision, the resistance you feel, it's not about the object at all. It's about what letting it go seems to say about you or about them or about a relationship. And that is a much heavier thing to carry than a box in a closet. Now, if this is where you're stuck, I want you to know that this is a different kind of decluttering than the other 4 blind spots, and it deserves patience and not urgency. So take your time, sit with your feelings, and understand and be honest with yourself. Maybe I should let some of this go. As for the people who are sprawlers who live with you, you're gonna have to lead by example here. Hopefully they'll come along. Once you see these blind spots and you know that they're there, what do you do about them? This is exactly why I built the Mighty Method, because spotting clutter is only half the battle. You need a simple way to actually work through it without getting stuck in overwhelm. So the Mighty Method, it has 4 steps: triage, simplify, organize, and thrive. Triage comes from my nursing days. We need to assess things properly. So we start with whatever is causing the most stress or friction right now. Not necessarily the biggest mess, but the thing that's actually affecting your life and that is going to give you like the biggest payoff. Which, if you're paying attention, is exactly how we open this conversation. This step helps you start where the friction is and not where the guilt is. The next step is simplify. And that means removing what is unnecessary before you do anything else. This is where 4 out of our 5 blind spots live. The useful someday items, the contained clutter hiding in your baskets and bins, the visual noise cluttering your surfaces, the high maintenance items costing you way more than they give back. Simplify is that step that asks the honest question: does this actually belong in my life right now, or am I just storing it out of habit? The next step is organize, which comes after and not before simplify. Once the volume is actually down, organizing takes minutes instead of hours, because you're not trying to organize your way around too much stuff. You're just giving what's left a proper home. Usually things just fall into place with very little effort. It's the most fun step. But don't skip simplify. The last step is thrive, and that is where routines and habits come in. Daily, weekly systems that keep things from creeping back to where they started. Because a declutter that doesn't get maintained, it just becomes next year's project again. Nobody wants to declutter the same drawer 3 years in a row. That's not a decluttering habit. That's a toxic decluttering relationship, and it's time to break up. If you want to actually walk through the Mighty Method step by step in your own home, I have a free decluttering blueprint. You can go to minimalisthome.ca/blueprint. It breaks triage, simplify, organize, and thrive down room by room, so you're not guessing what to tackle first or how to keep it from piling up. It's the practical companion to everything we just talked about. You now know where to look. The blueprint shows you exactly what to do once you see it. Your home doesn't need to look chaotic to be quietly working against you. Sometimes the clutter that affects you the most is the clutter you've stopped noticing. And I want to invite you to watch this video here, which is all about why you need to stop organizing and how to start decluttering. I hope something great happens for you today. Please like, subscribe, give us a hype. Stay tidy and mighty. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.